This episode is brought to you by Peak, the blockchain for real-world applications and home of DePIN. If you think it's time for Web3 to get real, check out their website at peak.network. That's peaq.network. Hello everyone, Daniel from Hotspotty here, and today I'm excited to have Mark, CEO and co-founder of Aethir, a project taking distributed GPU ecosystem by storm, building an enterprise-grade infrastructure for all your needs. Just to have some ideas what they're trying to build and what they already have, they have 20 times more GPU than render networks. They have 45 times more teraflops, which computer power, than a cache network. They have 31 times more infrastructure capital committed than a cache network and render network combined. That's insane. They actually have over 3,000 H100 GPUs from NVIDIA. Just to have an idea, this graphic cards goes between $40,000 and $60,000 each. So that's a massive amount of compute power that they have on their disposal. And of course, they have many partners already, multi-year contracts with larger telcos, cloud computing providers, and future computing projects, and much more. Man, that's super exciting. Thanks so much for being in the podcast, Mark. It's a pleasure to have you here. We met in person a few weeks ago in Denver. We actually saw the excitement of the DePIN ecosystem there. Yeah, we're just getting started, right? That's like super passionate about for me, and really happy to have you on the podcast. To get started, can you introduce yourself, your background, and share the vision behind the project?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. Just first off, thank you, Daniel, for having me. I think what you guys have been building at depinhub and Hotspotty and the commitment that you've had to the DePIN space over the past kind of over 3 years is fantastic, right? You were committed to it before there was the label DePIN, right? So really great to kind of be here chatting with you today, and thank you for shining a light on Aethir. So yeah, let me kind of jump in, a little bit of background about myself. My name's Mark, CEO, co-founder here at Aethir. My background is in infrastructure building, right? I've been building big projects in kind of the energy and oil and gas space since I started my career in some of the most remote places in the world, the middle of the desert, middle of the ocean. But generally, really big infrastructure projects were what had kind of always caught my attention. Around 6-7 years into my career, I got the entrepreneurial bug, and I found my first company. It was a biotech company, developed a series of kind of medical centers that had applications in the prehabilitation, rehabilitation space, raised some money, and had a bit of a divergent kind of path in front of me. One was head to the startup ecosystems of maybe New York or the Bay Area. And the other was, head to China, get close to manufacturing, and maybe reduce the iteration time in the kind of engineering cycle for these sensors. And I chose the latter. I chose to move to China, make that leap. Definitely an adventure. And in retrospect, a huge inflection point for me in my career. Long story short, moved to China, raised some more money with that project, worked on it for a couple of years before really feeling this pull back into infrastructure, which is, again, like I mentioned, always been my passion. There were some really cool infrastructure projects happening in China at the time. One of them was the Tencent Cloud Gaming Network. For those that aren't familiar, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more here, cloud gaming is essentially the delivery of high-performance GPU cloud, right? Which is something that's very relevant to gaming and obviously AI. Long story short, we were working on that project, realized that there were some scalability challenges as it related to the scaling of traditional cloud resources in a GPU way. And as a result of that, we looked at maybe solutions in the decentralized hardware space. We kind of worked internally on this project for about a year before we spun it out, but the rest is kind of history.
How would you explain the project for a 5-year-old? That's one question that I like to ask to make it very simple to get all the spectrum of listeners on the podcast.
Yeah, I think it would be difficult to explain to a 5-year-old, but I will give it my best bet. I'm kind of aiming for 8-year-olds here, but we'll start with what is the cloud, right? I won't go into kind of a technical detail, but I will say that I think most people have a pretty good understanding of what the cloud is these days. We use the cloud to store our photos so that you don't need to have that local storage on your phone. We use it to store documents and files. Google Cloud, Google Drive, they're all kind of great examples of what the cloud is. Essentially, the cloud is the ability to kind of offload tasks, computer-based tasks, to computers that are hosted somewhere else. When it comes to the type of work that we do in the cloud. We deliver GPU cloud resources. So essentially what we do is instead of putting just files or folders in the cloud, we actually put workloads in the cloud. We connect actual compute activities with live GPU cloud resources, essentially allowing users to conduct compute tasks without actually needing that intense local hardware to complete that work. I think that's probably as best as I can explain it as it relates to kind of cloud and GPU cloud workloads. I think the next kind of step of the explanation is what is decentralization in this context, right? Why is it decentralized? Well, really that is simply just the compute that's provided to our network is provided by a vast number of different owners. There's no centralized institution that owns all of the hardware in our network. Just like Bitcoin, there is no company that owns all of the Bitcoin miners all over the world, right? You have independent people mining Bitcoin from their laptop. You have big crypto mining farms with hundreds of thousands of GPUs institutionally mining the coin, and they're all different entities contributing to this decentralized compute objective. And it's the same with Aethir. All of the compute, all of the GPUs that contribute work in our network are owned by different people, and that's really exciting, right? Because GPUs are expensive. This infrastructure would be incredibly expensive to own by one single entity, and by offloading that ownership to different parties, you have a really scalable, cost-efficient model that allows you to provide this compute to others, right, through your compute marketplace in a really kind of cost-effective manner. I think the best analogy for all of this really is it's kind of like Airbnb for GPUs. You can just contribute your GPUs to this Airbnb-like network, and then people can come, look at the type of GPUs that are being exposed by your infrastructure, and they can say, oh, this GPU meets my needs, and the match is made. So I hope that explains what we do at a simple level.
Definitely. Yeah, that was very good. Thank you. Where does the name come from? I was thinking, like, trying to figure out. I couldn't.
Funnily enough, a lot of people have difficulty first off pronouncing the name. They're like, is it Aethir? I've heard a number of different pronunciations, and I'll start there. It's pronounced Aethir, and the origin of the word I think is really, really fascinating. So the etymology of our name is from the Greek word Aethir with a E instead of an I. So Aether. Now, if you go back to the ancient Greeks and the astronomers of the time, they would look to the skies and the planets and the stars, but they didn't necessarily have a concept for the void of space. Right? They didn't necessarily understand that space was just a vacuum, that it was empty. They assumed that for the stars to exist, for gravity to exist, they had a basic comprehension of gravity. For light to travel through space to Earth, from the sun, from these stars, there must be a substance. The universe must be created and held within this substance that allowed for the travel and the transfer of light and energy. And the substance that they named that interlinked the entire universe was called Aethir. So you can kind of think of Aethir as the connective tissue of the universe, right? The connective substance that links all things. So when we were looking at our network and the type of ambition that we have to be this universal cloud compute network, this really resonated with us as a team. So Aethir is very much about being that connective tissue, being that universal link between all things.
Wow, this answer was much better than I was expecting. Really, really nice name. I think it makes a lot of sense. It gives a lot of power, right, to what you guys are building. PIC is a layer 1 blockchain designed to power DePINs. Why do DePINs choose to build on PIC? It's fast, scalable, low cost, offer builders are ready to deploy DePIN SDK, and it's multi-chain. So when you build on PIC, you're building for all Web3. PIC is home for the fastest growing DePIN projects, with more than 100,000 vehicles and devices deployed, over a dozen DePINs already building, and the world leading device manufacturers such as Boss partner with them. Think of building a DePIN? Peak has a grant program for DePIN builders. If you're listening to this, remember, you're early. The Peak network will launch in the first half of 2024. Check out Peak's channels for more details and links in the podcast description. One question that I have is there's a lot of nowadays decentralized GPU projects. Like there's IONET, there's Render, of course, there is Nosana and other ones. How do you guys differentiate for all the decentralized GPU projects out there?
Yeah, this is a good question. And I think the big differentiator between Aethir and other kind of players in the space is really the type of compute that we aggregate. So at Aethir, we come very much from an enterprise compute background. And we knew that when we were transitioning into this DePIN ecosystem, that if we wanted to be the type of company that we knew was very much in our DNA, that we had to ensure that we could serve enterprise customers. Now, that sounds easy in theory, but it's actually a lot more difficult than it appears at first glance. And that's because of a number of kind of unique challenges that DePIN projects face. Probably one of the biggest ones is this chicken and the egg issue that DePIN projects have early on in their life cycle, right? As a DePIN project, you want to be able to go to hardware providers and you want to be able to say, hey, join my network, contribute your hardware to my network. But those hardware providers, they're going to come to you and they're going to say, well, you need to show me that there's demand, right? You need to show me that your network has users. And you're like, well, how can I have users if there's no hardware for those users to exist on top of, right? So you have this kind of chicken and the egg issue that you need to solve. And traditionally, the best way to solve that, or probably one of the most common methods to solve that, is to be obviously a Web3 project, take your token and say to gamers, say to designers, people with decent desktop GPUs, and say, hey, I'll give you some tokens if you contribute your GPU to my network. What this does is it solves that chicken and the egg problem for you, right? You can aggregate your first cohort of compute. You can take that compute, maybe you've got 2, 3, 5,000 GPUs. You can go to VCs, you can raise a bit of capital, and you can attempt to sort of spin that wheel. The difficulty is it's really, really hard to take that compute stack and sell it to enterprise compute buyers. It's really hard to meet the service and the quality and the uptime requirements of these big compute buyers when you've aggregated essentially a highly diverse, often consumer-focused cohort of GPUs. This essentially means that you have a network that's plagued often by kind of inefficiency and underutilization. And at Aethir, we knew that this was kind of not the path that we wanted to go. So we took a very, very different approach. We said, if we're going to move into this space, who are our customers? Who are they? And what compute do they want access to? What is their appetite specifically? We didn't want to be going to different compute buyers and saying, hey, we know you want apples, but we've got a lot of like oranges and grapes, right? So how about those? We really wanted to match the compute we were aggregating with the appetite of these compute buyers. So we kind of took a more difficult path, right? And since day one, we've been aggregating only enterprise-grade GPUs. Enterprise-grade GPUs that sit in data centers or are committed to enterprise-grade network infrastructure. The type of GPU that enterprise customers want, and also the type of GPU that meets the standards and the requirements and the SLAs of these big companies. So Aethir is enterprise focused, and that's the biggest differentiator. I think in the DePIN GPU cloud space, the end state, the end goal for all projects is the same. We all want this essentially global hardware gig economy where any form of compute, whether it's your phone or a high-powered PC or an enterprise-grade chip sitting in a data center, we want it to be as simple as connecting a computer to the internet is today, right? You can upload compute to this permissionless compute ecosystem where anyone can kind of come and match a compute job to that compute supply. The difference today really is in the go-to-market. How do you take the compute that you have and sell it in a way that kind of guarantees the likelihood that you'll be the one that's there, 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now. And Aethir's focus has always been enterprise. And we think that that's the best way for us, at least, to proceed and kind of spin this flywheel of our DePIN network.
I was looking back at studying some other GPU projects. I think you guys are the only ones that I've seen that you can do live streaming of data, right? Like for example, if you want to do gaming, I used to run like a GeForce Now game in my computer when I got fiber internet for the first time. I think it was very, very interesting. A lot of the projects I see they're doing like they're processing tasks, like you said, like an image to be rendered with like a turn LLM. But you guys are also doing a lot of things on like the gaming industry, and that's going to be like very, very low latency, on the spot processing. How has that experience been, and how do you see the gaming market grow on that angle?
Yeah, I think this is really a core aspect of what Aethir delivers, right? This hyper low latency, high performance GPU cloud in a scalable, cost effective form. To be honest, I think there's actually a bigger problem at play here that cloud gaming addresses that I think is worth kind of double clicking on, right? If you take a look at the gaming ecosystem as a whole, there's 3.3 billion gamers out there. Roughly 2.8 billion of them are gaming on low-end devices. The cost of GPUs is increasing year on year. It's more expensive now to own a high-end GPU than it's ever been before. So the gate or the barrier restricting these 2.8 billion gamers from accessing high-end gaming content is greater than it's ever been. It's more difficult, more expensive for them to buy into that content experience than it's ever been before. And, flipping that on its head, right? It's more difficult for big game publishers to reach these 2.8 billion gamers than it's ever been before. The gap between the requirements of those AAA titles and the average requirements of these kind of low-end users is greater than we've ever seen. And there's really only a few ways that you can kind of conceive solving this problem. And in my mind, it kind of comes down to kind of three, right? The first is you raise the GDP in the regions where these gamers live, and all of a sudden everyone has the capacity to afford more expensive gaming equipment, right? Very, very unlikely that this is the solution. The second potential solution is there's some sort of quantum leap in chipset technology, and all of a sudden it's really inexpensive to produce high-powered independent chips, and we have the ability to democratize essentially access to those chips so that everyone has essentially the same core technology available to them in their handheld device. Also very, very unlikely. But the third solution, right, is essentially just scaling a technology we already have. Right? We already have cloud gaming. Cloud gaming is the ability to deliver compute in such a way that we remove entirely the requirement of a user to have access to high-end equipment. The only problem is, how do you scale that technology in a cost-effective way? And that's exactly what Aethir does. By offloading the cost of that compute to a decentralized hardware network, we have such a greater efficiency when you talk about scalability, that we can take this technology and cost effectively deliver it in developing markets, in Southeast Asia, in Latin America. We can kind of take that technology and deliver it to the regions where it's needed most. And that's something you can only really do on the back of a DePIN. That's one of the biggest challenges that's out there, right? Where else is there a 2.8 billion person slice of pie that a gaming studio can potentially address? No, gaming is huge for us. You hear a lot about AI and DePIN, and that's really important. Like, our AI business is a huge piece of what we do and the products that we sell. But gaming's also always been at our core, and I think that particular differentiation that we have as a project that can deal with this real-time rendering compute makes us a very, very interesting product. I will say one other point on this before I kind of hand it over. I know I've talked a lot, but if you think about the AI market at the moment, right, it's very new. We have a huge amount of kind of compute training workloads. We have a small number of very large AI models that are really interesting to consumers, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. But what we haven't really seen a lot of yet that we know is coming are these AI applications, these, even AI companions, for example. When you think about how we interact with AI today, it's very much a chatbot, right? It's through text. But we know that very, very soon we're going to be communicating via voice, right? We're going to be communicating with a digital avatar that represents the AI, not just a chat box. That communication requires real-time rendering, real-time compute. You need the face of that avatar to have their mouth move when they're speaking, right? To respond with facial features to the emotions that should exist, to kind of get over this uncanny valley situation that would occur if you didn't kind of code that capability in. That, what I call productization layer of AI, is exactly what cloud gaming networks deliver. So I really see the infrastructure that we have as well as being hyper relevant to the maturity of the AI industry, and something that we can kind of build directly in parallel with all of the infrastructure we're deploying for gaming.
I believe that the future people won't have very expensive computers in their homes, right? Like you could potentially just connect your phone to the monitor to work. You just unplug it. You have one device that does everything, because all the processing is being offloaded to somewhere else, some other service powered by you guys. It's going to be very interesting when you can run like AAA games in your phone. I can imagine that in the future, people will have just one phone and they connect to the TV. If you're going to play games, you connect your phone to the TV, a controller. It's kind of look like a bit of a sci-fi movie, but I think it's coming there, right? And that's definitely where I see the future. And then you guys are being like the backbone of this narrative. I think it's super exciting. Also, I have here a little iPhone project. You guys have been working with them, right?
Yeah, they're building on our infrastructure. Really, really cool project.
Yeah, so iPhone is one that they're kind of trying to do the same things, that you can offload the whole phone into like virtually, like a virtual phone, that's going to be amazing, because me personally, after 12 years, I shifted from Android back to iPhone, and man, it was a pain, like I lost a lot of things. It was like configuring. If I could just have like everything on the cloud, I just like attached to the new phone, that would have been super, super exciting. I think everything that you said makes a lot of sense. And you can't forget that this is still quite early, right? So the future is extremely exciting, and see how that's gonna play out. I just can't wait to see where you guys gonna go next. Can you talk a little bit about like the current state of the Aethir network? You guys are gonna do like some node sales. Like, what is the current step for the next, let's say, 1 month, more 1 to 2 months? What's happening there?
Yeah, I think short-term roadmap is dominated by node sale and preparation for our mainnet launch. So I'll start with the node sale. I think this is a really interesting thing that we're doing at Aethir. Inside Aethir's, I guess, under the hood of Aethir, we have essentially 3 primary roles that participants can partake in. The biggest one, I guess, or the most important in many ways, is what we call the container. The container is where all the GPUs live. So if you're a GPU owner, say, for example, an enterprise GPU owner, and you want to contribute your H100 GPUs to our network, once you contribute those GPUs into our ecosystem, you'll be classified as a container, right? Now, to satisfy the requirements of the network, as a container, you need to have the type of GPUs that our network wants, right? So as a Web3 project, this is not necessarily a great role for the vast majority of retail users, right? It's not necessarily the best way for us to onboard a large number of consumers into our network in such a way that they can participate and be a part of our ecosystem. And that's where the second participant in our network comes into play. The second participant is called the checker. And the checker is like the policeman of the network. It's like a validator. I say a validator on steroids, right? It's a validator that validates blockchain-based activities, but it also validates the cloud workloads that are happening, whether it's the type of gaming compute that's being delivered or a machine learning workload. It's out there essentially ensuring that all of these GPUs that are contributing in our network are delivering the work that they're reporting that they're delivering, right? You can't have you always want to be challenging fraud within your ecosystem, right? If someone, for example, is somehow able to say, hey, this is my GPU that I'm contributing to the network, it's delivering this really, really expensive task, but in actuality, it's doing nothing, right? That's a recipe for kind of disaster within your network. So having this police force essentially gives our network the confidence that it's addressing fraud and also kind of addressing any risk or threat of collusion between different kind of hardware owners and role participants in the network. Now, what's great about the checker is that the hardware requirements to operate as a checker are minimal. You really just need to be able to run a small application on a consumer device, right? Your average home computer or laptop is more than capable of running it. And then essentially your desktop PC, your laptop becomes one of these policemen in the network. And this little program is out there checking all of the containers within our ecosystem, ranking their activities, scoring them, essentially proving to the network that accurate work is happening. And for that activity, checkers are rewarded via our token. Actually, 15% of our total token supply is being distributed to checkers over the next kind of 4 years. So this is a hugely powerful role within our ecosystem, and we chose to fully decentralize it, right? So we have a big node sale, arguably the biggest node sale in kind of Web3 history, that's going live on the 20th of March, so just a few days from now. That node sale is essentially the opportunity to purchase a license, which gives you permission to operate as a checker in our ecosystem. And I think that's really, really cool, right? Because that gives us the ability to let the community onboard into our ecosystem in a way that, again, is not gated behind a really expensive enterprise GPU ownership, but also just purely from a philosophical standpoint. It's this really great separation of like police and state. You know what I mean? It gives community the ability to police us. They're the ones with the power to recognize fraud and collusion in the network, not us. And that I think's a really, really cool piece of this kind of ethos that we have at Aethir. The third role within our network is a minor role. They're called the indexer, and they're essentially the matchmaker, right? So when someone purchases or is looking to purchase compute, the indexer is the participant in the network that'll match it with the correct compute on the other side of the market. And that's there's only a few hundred of those, and they're not very highly rewarded. So we haven't really looked at decentralizing that yet, but it is on the roadmap. But that node sale is, like I mentioned, going live on the 20th of March. I think you guys are involved in the node sale as well. So you definitely feel free to talk about how and where people can get access to your whitelist and referral link for kind of these special nodes that we've kind of set aside for your community. But yeah, that honestly, that's my primary focus for the next kind of month.
Yeah, man, that's super exciting. Yeah, for sure. Everybody just, I would say, check the comments on this video or audio, depending where you're listening to the podcast. All the information is going to be listed there. There's going to be a lot of excitement that we're going to we always try to work with projects and bring value to the community, and also providing like a whitelist position from the checkers to the community. It's going to be like a very, very rewarding experience, especially because it's like Mark said, it's very easy to run those devices, right? We just check the information we're going to be providing in this episode and the next few days as well on our social media, and of course coming up in the newsletter that's everybody should be signed up for. Make sure that, depinhub.io, there's a little form that make sure to subscribe to our newsletter, because we try to bring a lot of good content and a lot of opportunities as well, a lot of alphas. So Mark, where can people know more about Aethir? You have a website, Twitter?
Yeah, absolutely. Check out aethir.com, our website. There will be specific links and portals set up for accessing the checker node sale. There are also partnerships with kind of some key launch pads, so you might see also some links there. I will say that there are scams out there at the moment, people trying to take advantage of the kind of popularity and interest that is out there. So really do be careful. Use your kind of trusted communities like DePIN Hub and others to kind of access the correct channels here, so you don't get scammed. Check out Twitter, Aethir Cloud. At Aethir Cloud is our Twitter. Definitely go onto our Discord. You can reach out to our moderators 24/7. They can validate for you whether a link that you're seeing is real. Yeah, we'd love to kind of keep as engaged as we can with the community. We hope that this will drive a lot of interest in what we're doing. So please come and join our socials, come and join our communities. We've got a lot more on the kind of roadmap plan for the next kind of couple of months in particular. And we'd love to kind of share that with you.
Awesome. Well, yeah, remember, every time you do anything in crypto, just be extra careful. If you have any questions, don't really trust people that come to DM randomly to your Discord or Twitter or Telegram trying to help you, because most of the time they're not really trying to help you. So, get a really good judgment on that. Well, thanks so much, Mark, to join the podcast. It was a really interesting conversation. I'm really excited to see where you guys are going to go throughout the next years, next 4-10 years. And of course, the next few days, right? I think 2 weeks, you're going to have the node sale. Everyone, make sure to subscribe to our channels. We're going to have all the information on the comments below. And yeah, see you in the next episode of DePIN Hub Podcast. Thanks so much, man. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.